What makes a warm home? Entry 19, apple picking. As summer turns the corner into fall, orchards start to come into full season. I don't know if you've ever walked through an orchard when all the apples are ripe for picking, but the smell of crisp apple is everywhere. A fall apple orchard is such a natural blessing. Being able to see the fall harvest bounty that God grows and partake in the plenty that comes with some attentive cultivation is so gratifying. Growing up, on a handful of occasions, my parents took us to an orchard to pick our own apples, to make apple pie and freeze to use in the coming year or two. Showing up at the orchard, we would drive up to a picturesque red barn with a gravel road running past a small grass parking area for the pear and plum orchards by the road. The rough road would rattle the vehicle as we drove between the barn and the owner's home to the orchards farther back on the property. The barn had a small shop for those who wanted fresh produce without the hassle of picking their own. I never understood the people who bought there, as it was always so fun to work your way through the orchard and pick your haul. Driving further back on the property, we'd go past the strawberry fields that we picked in during the spring. And further past the orchards was a big pumpkin patch that was just starting to get close to ready for pumpkin picking in October as Halloween approached. If I'm honest, apples aren't my favorite fruit to eat on a regular basis. The skin breaks and presses on my gums, and I find them uncomfortable to eat daily. However, and I know it's frowned upon, but I will admit to eating an apple or two while in the orchard. By that time of year outside in Wisconsin, it's cool enough that the apples right off the tree are chilled, and the snap and crunchy texture of an apple fresh from the branch is hard to beat. Walking down the well trodden trails and aisles of trees, your shoes often get a little muddy, but the fall air is invigorating. When you find that tree that hasn't been picked over yet, it's exciting to start filling your basket with the fresh fruit that is so synonymous with fall. The wooden bushel baskets remind me of days long past, simpler times, and give me the feeling of accomplishment as we slowly fill them. The bright red blush of pink lady apples, the bold light green and ever tart Granny Smiths, and the yellow orange and lightly speckled golden delicious filled our baskets with color and sweetness that would make for wonderful holiday meals and applesauce. We would pick our fill and head home to work on processing all of the apples so they wouldn't end up going bad before we could use them. My mom would set up her apple peeler and corer. The device clamped onto the counter had a blade to peel the apple and a coring ring. We would then mount an apple on the three prongs and turn a crank. The apple would get peeled, cored, and spiral cut. The peels came off in a long spiral string, and we would race to see who could eat the fastest, a fall version of slurping pasta. The spiral cut apples would then be doused in lemon juice to prevent them from browning and bagged in labeled freezer quart bags for use in apple pies or tarts. These days, as I experiment with food, cooking, and baking, I've learned how to make applesauce. I use about 8 large apples, peeled, cored, and cut into small pieces. I put them in a large saucepan with about a cup of water, half a cup of maple syrup, 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar, 1.5 tablespoons of cinnamon, a healthy sprinkling of nutmeg, 2 or 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, and about a cup of golden raisins. All these cook in the pan with the lid on to steam and soften the apples. I stir occasionally. Once soft, I use an immersion blender to blend up the apples, raisins, and everything else to create the sauce. At this point, I adjust and add things to taste and reblend to stir the extra ingredients. It goes really well over brine and grilled pork chops and as a side dish for fall meals. Takes a little bit of time, but is well worth the effort. Fall is one of my favorite seasons. The air gets cooler and all the warm spices and smells of falls and the holidays start to come out. Apple picking during this season is one way to enjoy the gifts God gives us in nature. Sometimes in our busy world of technology, industry, and careers, we forget about the enormous blessings of where our food comes from. The bounty of food we so conveniently buy at the grocery store takes time, effort, and hard work to get there. Taking an afternoon to enjoy the outdoors and be thankful for the miracle that is nature and farming is good for our souls. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, but a heart of thankfulness is something that lasts all year round and leads to a more joyful home that welcomes people. and in this case, to the intoxicating smell of a warm apple pie fresh out of the oven. Start creating your warm home. Visit etsy.com/shop/warm home candles co. If you enjoy this audio journal, I would appreciate it if you hit subscribe or left a review. I will be publishing a new audio journal every week on Wednesday at noon on YouTube and Spotify. You can also find warm home brands and candles on Facebook and Instagram. And lastly, remember a warm home isn't about the things in your home, but about the people who live there and the grace and peace God gives them every day. Thanks for listening.